You may have seen this image floating around the internet for a while now. This image shows areas where large volcanic eruptions might take place within our lifetime. But what many of you might not know is that this map was made back in 2014, and a lot has changed since then. So today we're going to look at a brand new updated map, which predicts where our next supervolcano eruption will be, and why some of the most densely populated cities in the world are sitting on top of ticking time bombs. We'll start off by looking at this map released by the United States Geological Survey in 2014. This map shows us areas where large magical eruptions might take place within our lifetime. The colors here represent different levels of magma asperity. We go from yellow to orange to red, meaning low, medium, and high. You can see that all of the yellow areas account for about 75% of the Earth's land surface. And this makes sense because these areas are considered to be at the lowest risk for major eruptions. But if we zoom into the orange and red zones, we can see how much of a small fraction of the Earth's landmass these areas actually are. And yet, they pose the greatest potential threat for large explosive eruptions. For example, Japan sits right along the edge of the Ring of Fire, making it one of the most volcanically active countries on Earth. But it also means that it falls within the yellow zone on this map. So, although Japan is very prone to volcanic activity, most of its eruptions won't be very large. To further prove my point, let's look at this map, which shows us the locations of all volcanoes on Earth. And now let's overlay the previous map on top of it. You can clearly see that the majority of volcanoes are found within the yellow zone. For example, Mount Vesuvius, the volcano that wiped out the Roman city of Pompeii, is found right outside of Naples. And it's also found within the yellow zone. This is because, although the eruption of Vesuvius was massive, it's very unlikely that something similar will happen again anytime soon. Now that we understand this map, let's take a look at the newest data and see how it compares. This map was published in 2022, and the changes are pretty significant. Let's once again compare it to a map showing all volcanoes on Earth. As you can see, the 2025 map shows far more areas with high magma asperity. In fact, the entire western United States is now colored red. This means that there's a high likelihood of a large supervolcanic eruption happening in this region sometime within our lifetime. The reason for this is because the magma chamber beneath Yellowstone National Park has started to show signs of awakening. But before we get to that, let's once again compare the two maps side by side. You can see that the Middle East and Northern Africa now show much more red. In fact, the entire area surrounding the Red Sea is considered to have high magma asperity. Now, do you remember how I said that the Ring of Fire makes Japan very volcanically active? Well, the Ring of Fire surrounds the entire Pacific Ocean, and it's the reason why much of this area is now colored red on the 2025 map. This includes the Mariana Islands, which are home to over 50 volcanoes, including the highest active volcano on Earth, which just erupted earlier this year. It also includes the Eurasian Islands, which are home to over 100 volcanoes, including the notorious Mount Vesuvius. But perhaps the biggest change is in the Americas. Much of the western United States is now colored red, while the eastern portion is now mostly colored orange. This is because the magma chamber beneath Yellowstone National Park has been showing signs of increased activity. In fact, in 2021, the United States Geological Survey reported that the magma chamber beneath Yellowstone had grown by nearly 8 cubic kilometers, which is equivalent to 2 million Olympic-sized swimming pools. This has led some people to believe that a massive eruption is imminent. However, experts say that there is no need to worry because the chances of a large eruption are very low. In fact, the United States Geological Survey says that the chances of a major eruption in the next 10,000 years is only about 1 in 7 million. Still, it's important to remember that Yellowstone is a supervolcano that erupted 3 times in the past, and each eruption created a crater that was up to 90 kilometers wide and 600 meters deep. If Yellowstone were to erupt again, it could cause widespread devastation across the western United States. Ash would likely bury much of the western half of the country, causing widespread crop failures and other environmental problems. Lava flows would destroy everything in their path, turning parts of Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana into molten rock. And the eruption column would reach tens of kilometers into the atmosphere, blocking out the sun and plunging the world into darkness for months. Pyroclastic flows would race down the slopes of the volcano at hundreds of kilometers per hour, incinerating everything in their path. And lahars, which are volcanic mudflows, would travel down river valleys, destroying everything in their path. All of this would cause widespread devastation and loss of life. Crops would fail, leading to widespread starvation. Infrastructure would be destroyed, leading to widespread displacement. And the economy would collapse, leading to widespread poverty. And I think it's safe to say that nobody wants to live through something like that. Now, before we continue, I want to say that I'm not trying to spread fear or panic in this video. Rather, I'm just trying to educate people about the risks posed by supervolcanoes. It's important to remember that the risk of a supervolcanic eruption is very low. In fact, the United States Geological Survey says that the chances of a major eruption at Yellowstone in the next 10,000 years is only about 1 in 7 million. Still, it's important to be prepared for any natural disaster, whether it's a supervolcanic eruption, a tsunami, or a hurricane. By being prepared, we can minimize the damage and loss of life. Now, let's continue looking at the 2025 map. If we focus on South America, we can see that much of the Andes mountain range is now colored red. This is because the region is highly prone to volcanic activity. In fact, there are over 200 volcanoes in the Andes, making it the most volcanically active mountain range on Earth. The region is home to some of the world's most dangerous volcanoes, including the 16th century AD Huascaran, which killed over 40,000 people after a 6 kilometers cubed block of ice fell off its summit. Now let's focus on Africa. Once again, much of this continent is now colored red. This is because the continent is highly tectonically active. In fact, the eastern part of Africa is part of the East African Rift System, which is a region where the Earth's crust is slowly tearing apart. This is creating new volcanoes as well as reactivating old ones. One of the most active volcanoes in Africa is Mount Nyiragongo, which is located in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Mount Nero is a stratovolcano that stands 3,400 meters above sea level. It contains some of the world's deadliest lava lakes, and it is the site of some of the world's deadliest volcanic eruptions. Now let's focus on Europe. There aren't many changes here except for Italy. Mount Vesuvius has moved from the yellow zone to the red zone. This is because the volcano is considered to be one of the most dangerous in the world. It's highly active and it's located near a major population center. If Vesuvius were to erupt again, it would cause catastrophic damage to the surrounding area. Now let's look at Asia. Once again, much of the continent is colored red. This is because the continent is highly tectonically active. In fact, the Ring of Fire, which surrounds the Pacific Ocean, also surrounds Asia. This makes much of the continent highly prone to volcanic activity. One of the most active volcanoes in Asia is Mount Pinatubo, which is located in the Philippines. Mount Pinatubo is a stratovolcano that stands 1,400 meters above sea level. It is the site of the world's most deadly volcanic eruption in recent history, which killed over 800 people in 1991. And finally, let's look at Australia. There aren't many changes here either. The continent is highly tectonically active, but most of its volcanoes are dormant. So, what do you think about this new map? Does it scare you, or do you think that it's just a part of living on Earth? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching.